Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's better on draft.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 250 of the Better on Draft podcast. My name is Ken. Before we get started, if you are in Michigan and love craft beer, to go to mibeermap.com. The app is launched. Download it, iOS or Android. Enjoy it. It's free for you, free for a brewery that you know to get on, so you don't have to pay for it. Nobody has to pay for it to use it. That's all. I wanted to get that out of the way. We have a great guest today. My name is Ken, and I am drinking. I'm actually about to crack it open right now. It's a beer called Canebrake. Now, this beer is a Louisiana wheat ale. It's from, obviously, the state of Louisiana. That's going to come up on me. Drank it a little too fast. Oh, I think we're good. There we go. And our guest today is going to be from Parish Brewing, Andrew Godley. How you doing today?
What's up, guys?
We appreciate you joining on this episode 250. We hope you're feeling better. We know you were a little bit sick last week, but it looks like you're drinking. You're in good spirits, so it's good to see. I'm coming in with the first question for you, so I hope you're ready. So I've got the Canebrake right in front of me. According to your site, this is the first beer that you ever sold. What went into making this beer, and has it changed at all since you started brewing it to the brewing it on the smaller systems?
Yeah, so Canebrake was the first beer that we ever made. I mean, Parish is 10 years old now, and that means we've been making this beer for 10 years. It's kind of a dinosaur in craft beer terms. I mean, I can remember when we first started making it, I felt, like such a young entrant into the brewery world, and this beer was so not known. But down here in Louisiana, it's become quite a big staple. We sell more of it in Louisiana than any other beer that we make. But it's just a wheat beer. It's a basic, simple wheat beer, but the kicker is it's made with sugarcane syrup. Back before I, knew what to do as a brewery, I mean, this is, 11, 12 years ago when I've decided I'm going to open a brewery, you have to decide what beers to make, right? And Dogfish Head was huge at the time. And I remember thinking this whole thing that Dogfish Head does with indigenous ingredients, that's what they would say is the term indigenous ingredients. It was just sort of a light bulb moment.
Sorry, that was me.
Yeah, indigenous ingredients, saying that you need to try and utilize local ingredients wherever possible. And sugarcane is a gigantic crop here in Louisiana. I mean, I would go for runs after work with my dogs through sugarcane fields, literally. And where I built the brewery, the entire field behind it was a sugarcane field. And so it's sort of a no-brainer. We need to make a beer and try and utilize sugarcane in some way. And that's what Canebrake is. It's a wheat beer, but part of the fermentables, about 10% of the fermentables, the grain, is replaced with sugar from sugarcane.
Now, I learned this term this week because of all the craziness going on with the stocks, and the phrase is "explain this to me like I'm 5." So, what is the difference between sugarcane syrup and high fructose corn syrup?
Well, one's from sugarcane, one's from corn, number one. But
Okay.
if you put them in a glass side by side, they would look pretty similar. I'm no expert on the production of high fructose corn syrup. I know a lot about how sugarcane syrup is made, and I have to imagine they're very similar processes. In sugarcane, they smash up the sugarcane to get what they call liquor out of juice. It's like a watery liquid that has some of the sugar in it, and then it goes through a chemical refining process essentially. But to make the syrup, they basically have to boil off all the water and add an acid which inverts the sugar molecules to make it stay as a liquid instead of a solid. And that's how you make sugarcane syrup. I bet corn syrup is very similar.
All right. Well, I'm gonna bring in one of our co-hosts, Wendy. How you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Super happy that it's Friday.
What are
It's
you
been a long
drinking?
week. I have a Parish Brewing Company Sips, and this one is a Pinot Noir grape and black currant. It's a blender style beer. It's so delicious.
All right. What question do you have for Andrew?
Well, so in talking to my friends this week, I have friends who absolutely love Parish or they've never heard of them. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about Parish Brewing?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, we're definitely not the most well-known brewery for sure, but I think that people that pay attention to the craft beer world, I mean, we've sort of carved out a little space for ourselves here in the Deep South. We've got a couple of beers that have gone out there that have really put us on the map. And I think as the years go by, um, you know, we've developed more and more notoriety and more of a name for ourselves by consistently making some pretty awesome beers, some pretty good heavy hitters. I mean, we just they I mean, we won a gold medal at the GABF last year, and we're starting to get distribution a little further. We currently sell beer from Southeast Texas to Florida in distribution, but we're doing more and more beers at the tap room only. I mean, that's been the trend over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, we built the brewery to be a distributing brewery, making beers like Cane Break, 9.99 six packs, that kind of thing. And that was 10 years ago. But the beer industry has changed. I mean, what consumers are looking for has changed. And, we're hungry. We got a team of people here, starting with myself, that no one's ever worked at another brewery before. And which is probably because we're in South Louisiana and there's no fucking breweries. But where it's not like in Portland where you can freaking throw a stone 5 feet and there's a brewery. But we are in Michigan for that matter. I mean, there's 300 breweries in Michigan, 200 breweries feels like.
We're nearing 400
Jesus
open and
Christ.
running.
Wow. Yeah, I knew it was a couple hundred. That's even more than I thought. But in Louisiana, I think we've got 30 breweries. And we're the second largest brewery in the state. I think nationally, I think we'd be about 100 in terms of size of production, which is pretty big, I guess, because there's 7,000 breweries. But I mean, we're 20,000 barrels. 20,000 barrels, just kind of put it in perspective. Somebody in Michigan, Bell's is what, 200,000, something like that, 300,000.
I wish I always had the numbers right in front of me.
Just have the thing open when you were doing the show, Ken. Just have it
That's
in front of you.
I have so many things open right now, but I do have it open now. So Bell's in 2019 is 498, so 500,000.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
If we moved you into the state of Michigan, you would be ranked sixth, right above Old Nation, but behind Atwater.
Yeah, so there you go. Puts it in perspective, I guess. But we don't have anybody that's ever worked at the brewery before, and that's kind of what makes us unique. Is starting with beers like Cane Break. I mean, we don't do anything that's traditional here, really. I mean, I'm drinking a Pilsner actually. Now that I say that, that's about the most traditional thing we do, because we like drinking this kind of beer here in the Deep South because it's really hot. But I mean, we literally make this beer so I could drink it when I fish. But everything else we make that we actually sell well, because the Pilsner we don't sell a lot of. What we actually sell, they're all pretty innovative. We like to call them wow beers, beers that make you say wow when you drink them. Like that Pinot Noir sips that you're drinking, Pinot Noir and black currant sips. I mean, there's really no other beer like that. The whole fruit craze thing's coming, right? Everybody's making the slushies, the fruit slushies, and the fruited Berliners, the heavy duty ones. They're like fruit puree. And I mean, we make some beers like that, but we're trying to make them a little different. And I mean, we're using Pinot Noir grapes in that one. And we've got the whole Sips line that we sell here. They've been very successful. We distribute them now in clear bottles as you're drinking out of, which is pretty unique too. I mean, they're focusing on utilizing wine grapes. And that's kind of a good example of how we do things here. We're definitely following the trends a little bit. But we like to think of ourselves as, modifying the trends and creating some of the trends on our own by, taking them off on another tangent and creating a product that's sort of our own. Because again, we don't have anybody that's ever worked here from another brewery. So we have to figure shit out on our own. We do things our own way. And as a result, we innovate.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring in the next host. Father himself, Nicholas. How you doing?
Good. Now that I was able to get my kid to take a nap, looking a little grim there for a moment.
What are you drinking to celebrate nap time?
Well, I was able to. This is a little outside of my wheelhouse because I'm not double fisting. That part at least. I got a bourbon barrel aged Imperial Mayan Mocha from Oddside Ales.
All right. But as we continue, what question do you have for Andrew?
So you talked about nothing traditional. Like I'm assuming like true to style or anything like that. What is some of them? What's something like that innovative that kind of separates Parish from the other? You mentioned 40 other breweries in the state of Louisiana. What separate? What was that?
30, yeah.
30, okay. What separates Parish from being innovative and away from traditional versus everybody else?
Well, there's a few different things. I mean, one of the biggest differentiators that I'm most proud of, and we started doing this back in 2013. We were just looking back at some log sheets the other day to kind of look at recipes and how we make beers. But we've sort of, I think, innovated hopping a little bit, dry hopping and how we add hops to beer. We've definitely created some of our own techniques. That I mean, even some breweries in the South have taken on, and some others that we've collaborated with around the U.S. have sort of taken on some of the techniques that we've, I guess, pioneered. But my favorite one is we call it sub-ISO hopping or sub-isomerization hopping. And what we do is we actually reduce the temperature of the wort in brewing. Right, you boil beer. Down here in the South, it's at sea level. We boil at about 212 degrees. And at 212 degrees, there's a lot of isomerization of alpha acids when you add hops. The higher the temperature, the faster those alpha acids and hops convert to bitterness. So basically, the longer the hops stay at a really high temperature, the quicker you develop bitterness and the more bitterness you develop. If you can cool the beer down to a temperature where isomerization doesn't happen, a sub-isomerization temperature, right? We like to do that in all of our beers. And so our biggest, heavy hitter that gets out there in the world is called Ghost in the Machine. It's a double IPA that has sort of put us on the map globally. People in Japan don't give a shit about Canebrake, but they'll trade for Ghost in the Machine. And it's what makes Ghost in the Machine awesome, and what makes a lot of our hoppy beers really awesome is because they're very hoppy. They have a lot of, the tropical, floral, citrus qualities, of the various hops. We can highlight the hops, what makes all the different hops, unique, Nelson, Citra, Mosaic, whatever, but minimize the bitterness. Bitterness is, in our view, terrible. We don't want bitterness in IPAs. You're going to get some of it, but if we can minimize it, it makes the beers better. And so that's one way that we differentiated and innovated. Back in 2013, I mean, there was some hazy IPAs being made in like Vermont, a lot of really good ones. I mean, Heady Topper was incredible. We were losing our shit drinking Heady Topper back in 2013 here at the brewery. And we started making hazy IPAs back in 2013 and 2014, and there's nobody else doing it. And it was because we were making those unique additions, like the sub-isomerization addition. I just sort of illustrated for you guys. I hope it made sense.
Yep. It's interesting that you guys basically take you mentioned water is a little the year-round temperature in Louisiana. I've been to New Orleans to see the Saints kick the hell out of the Lions one time. That's no surprise, but it's interesting that you bring up just because of the temperature in Louisiana that you're able to do something different than what we would probably do up here in Michigan when it's 10 degrees outside right now, and about up where I'm in 3-4 inches of snow up here. So it's fascinating to me to see using the environment in to brew beer differently than others. As a follow-up with hops, and knowing how hot it is in Louisiana, is there much of a hop production at all?
No.
Or do you have to outsource pretty much all your product?
No, No. While there's most hops in the United States comes from the Pacific Northwest, but Michigan has a huge, hop growing and a rapidly growing hop area as well.
Yeah.
But in New Orleans, in Louisiana, there's nothing. It's too hot. The mildew down here kills the hops. So there's a lot of agriculture here, but unfortunately, hops don't grow well. And something that I learned, we have really good relationships with our hop farmers, and this might be interesting to you guys since you're beer aficionados and you should know about hops. So I hope you're interested in the story I'm about to tell you.
Bring it.
Take it away.
Take it away. The reason, do you know why Michigan and the Pacific Northwest are good hop growing regions?
Isn't it because of our climate and
climate and our water?
Water,
Man.
yeah.
Right.
Oh, so it's because it's your latitude. So it's your latitude. So it's all about the length of day during the growing season. So
Okay.
hops grow from a little tiny rhizome that's planted in the ground, the root in the ground, and it grows up once a year into this huge 20-foot tall vine that flowers hops.
Yep.
And you cut the whole vine at the ground, take that big old vine, take the hops off of it and so on. And the next year it has to grow up again from the ground essentially. And so hops require a very long day, lots of sunshine during the growing season. So your sunlight in Michigan, when does it get dark in Michigan, in the summer? 9 p.m.?
Yeah.
Yeah, about
8:30, 9 o'clock. Yeah.
9:30, in Louisiana, it's dark at 8, so, and it doesn't get light until, 7 a.m. where it might be light at 5:30 in Michigan. So the length of the day of sunlight in Michigan or the Pacific Northwest is ideal for hops. And so it's latitude based. I didn't realize that until a couple of years ago. We started working with our hop farmers, and you pick up a few of these things just by visiting and talking to them about what works.
Nice.
Well, we do have one more host. He's been waiting patiently. Robert, how you doing today? What are you drinking?
Doing all right, sir. I am currently drinking right now a very decadent stout that is Parish's Decade One, which is certainly hitting like you wouldn't believe. I was debating whether or not I was going to go with Ghost of the Machine next or hit the Caribbean Shade, but I'm going to wait and make that determination later. But I guess the way I wanted to start off first, I think since Nick had brought up football, the first thing I was kind of curious about is that you were a Pittsburgh native.
Yeah, I lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I was curious.
Of course, you're going to mention Pittsburgh in this conversation, Robert.
Yeah, well, it's important because, one, were you or are you still a Steelers fan, or did you convert to the Saints? And two, what is it about the craft beer scene in Pittsburgh that actually made you want to get into the game and start in Louisiana?
Yeah. So excellent questions. So I grew up in New Orleans. So I grew up a Saints fan, and when I moved to Pittsburgh, the Steelers became my AFC team, and because the Steelers it's a cool franchise. It's a cool old franchise. There's I guess they're all cool franchises. They've been around a long time, right? But you live in a place I got to know. I had friends, and we went to Penguins games, we went to Pirates games, and I didn't go to a Steelers game, but you kind of end up rooting for them. I met Ben Roethlisberger in a Walmart when I was up there. But I wouldn't say I'm a huge Steelers fan. Honestly, I just as soon see the Browns win the division than the Steelers.
Fair enough.
The Bengals or the Ravens or whatever. But I'm not mad if the Steelers win. But I am a huge Saints fan, mega Saints fan. That's my favorite team to root for, more than LSU, more than anything else. The Saints are what I if the Saints lose, I'm very upset the whole week and kind of hard to be around.
Yeah, same with my Steelers. I get it.
Yeah.
But what about that beer scene that was out there in Pittsburgh that really brought this on?
Yeah. So when I moved to Pittsburgh, I was 22, just finished college, and went to work for a big Fortune 500 company there called Alcoa, and it's the world's largest aluminum manufacturer. I went to work as an engineer over there, and I learned a few things in Pittsburgh for 2.5 years while I was there. Number one, I did not like working for a Fortune 500 company, corporate world, working for the man, as I called it. Just It was a horrible experience. I hated the corporate culture. I didn't like other people dictating, my success and upward mobility and ability to make money. I hated it. You guys probably know what I mean, the corporate thing.
Yeah, I'm a couple. We all are currently living it as we speak. So yeah, we know exactly what you mean.
It's tough. I mean, it can be good at times, but I was young and realized very early on, this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I needed to figure out a way to take matters in my own hands. And, that's a segue into realizing that there was a lot of craft beer being made in Pittsburgh. There was a little brewery called Church Brewing that opened in a church in Pittsburgh. And, Dogfish had launched in Pittsburgh while I was living there. And I remember seeing like 4-packs of pumpkin ale, and I mean, there was even Iron City. There was like all these like beers being made. I mean, just not even to mention Yingling, but there was just this huge beer culture in Pittsburgh. I mean, nobody talks about it, but you come from outside and you go to a place like Pittsburgh, you realize, I mean, there's Iron City made locally here. There's Rolling Rock right around the corner. There's Yingling, and there's like 30 craft breweries all over the area. And I moved back home in 2005 to Louisiana, and I went to a restaurant, and the only thing on the menu was a Beta Amber, and like Peroni and then the light beers. It was an Italian restaurant. And I had a epiphany, a light bulb moment. And I told my wife at the time, or she was going to be my wife, my future wife, I said, that's a great business opportunity. People in Louisiana need more beer. They need more craft beer options. And there's only one craft brewery in Louisiana. And that was the case. There was only one. There was a Beta at that time. I mean, just to look at Michigan, there was Bell's and probably Shorts or something. And I'm sure there was 5 or 6 up there at the time, but it was sort of, it was a time when I think a lot of future brewery owners were looking around at their various locales and thinking, man, people don't even know what they're missing. This is an opportunity.
Right. There's quite a few. But I've had a few of your beers in the past year. I'd probably say one of my favorites being the Reve Coffee Stout. And thanks to kind of the services of Tavour, which for those out there looking to sign up for Tavour, I still have my promo code of Robert, which will get you $10 off after you spend your first $25. But I was able to get those obviously through Tavour with ease. I've seen a couple of the other ones that have shown up with Ghost in the Machine. I think there was another one that had shown up, but I'm curious with the new footprint of getting beers out to, especially to states that you don't distribute to right now, that how has Tavour helped you in terms of selling beer out into this bigger network?
Yeah, we love Tavour. Tavour is filling a need for sure in the market. They, for people that don't understand what Tavour does, they actually are a legal retailer of beer, just like your bottle shop, locally. And what they do is they're in Seattle, in Washington State, where it's legal for a manufacturer of beer, right, a brewery like me, to sell Tavour, a retailer direct. We bypass the wholesalers, and they can sell directly to consumers in like 30 something states, because a retailer is allowed to sell legally directly to consumers online in those states. So it's a really great way to work around the laws. allow direct shipment to consumers' doorsteps of amazing craft beer from all over the country. And they're awesome. Number one, because we can, sell our beer for a good price. We're not forced into this 3-tier system that forces our margins to be very low, trying to get under a $9.99 6-pack on the shelf, right? I mean, you think about the amount of money a brewery gets to be able to sell through a 3-tier system to get to a $9.99 6-pack on a shelf. With Tavour, they're eliminating one of the tiers, and so both Tavour and Parish get to make a little bit more margin on the product, so we can afford to go hard and we can sell innovative big beers that cost a lot of money and to make, expensive beers to make, and the consumers that are looking to pay for the best beers, it's a great marketplace where these things can flourish. There's, Tavour is only bringing in what their consumers are buying as well. It's really wonderful. We love Tavour. We're selling about a beer, a release to them about once a month. It varies. I mean, they're taking Ghost in the Machine to sell one month. The next month it might be Rev Stout. Usually our biggest, most exciting beers, the ones that have the most awesome adjuncts, the ones that have the most interesting hops, the most well-known beers for us, they're able to crush and sell really well.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of that system, as you just mentioned, that it works around the law and helping to build that bigger margin to kind of step out of the 3-tier system. Do you think that 3-tier system needs to either go away or be adapted into something that is more towards these times?
Yeah, I mean, I love working with my beer wholesalers that do sell our beer in the traditional 3-tier system. So I think there's a place for that. I just every state unfortunately manages their beer laws differently. So you have some states that have amazing beer laws that are great for both the breweries and the consumers. For access and availability and direct shipment and all that. And you can still go to the store and get whatever on the shelf that came through a traditional 3-tier system, but places, I mean, Louisiana in particular is one that is, I know better than anything else. I used to be the president of the Craft Brewers Guild here in Louisiana, trying to work on change and lobbying the state legislature. And just one aspect, for example, of Louisiana that's problematic for us is I can't self-distribute anything. No brewery in Louisiana can self-distribute anything. No brewery in Louisiana can ship directly to consumers. Consumers in Louisiana can't receive a beer shipped directly to them from Michigan, for example, or California or anywhere else. There's some problems there, but I don't know that the right move is to completely dismantle the 3-tier system. I think that the states need to just allow more freedom of economic activity. I mean, we're all above the legal drinking age. We should be able to buy beer between consenting adults however we see fit. We're not regulating the purchase of jeans. We're not regulating the purchase of, Coca-Cola. I mean, it's either illegal or it's not. If beer is legal, let's buy and sell it like every other product. If we want to sell it through wholesalers, we can. I mean, you could buy Coke directly from Coke. There's no law that says you can't do that. It just, in their particular instance, it makes more sense for them to have a wholesaler model where they distribute the beer with a third-party company, a bottling company locally in every market. And so, that should be the case where economics and the free market principles take over and dictate what is best for the consumers and the manufacturers. Without regulation, everything will work itself out.
Yeah. That is very, I did not know that you couldn't self-distribute in Louisiana. We barely can distribute 2,000 barrels while Ohio can do 1 million. So that is very surprising. I did not know that, but I'm going to pass it over to Ken because he's got a couple questions here.
It's crazy that you went through all that because we pulled an article that you were in from the I don't have the name of the group that interviewed you guys, but it looks like it was maybe when you were part of the Louisiana Craft Brewers Guild, and the article was called "Why Does Craft Brewing Still Lag in Louisiana?" So this is 4.5 years ago, and they quoted you about pretty much everything you just said. So my question was going to be, has anything changed? But it doesn't sound like much has changed in the last 4.5 years, or has there been at least a little bit of change since 2016?
There's probably been a couple of small things. I mean, we were one of the biggest things in Louisiana that changed for beer was, breweries started selling directly to consumers. That was a big deal. The law didn't necessarily change for that to happen. It was kind of an interpretation by the local regulatory agency, the ATC, that enabled that. But as soon as breweries in Louisiana were able to sell directly to consumers, that really changed. I mean, you look at the beers that you guys are drinking from us right now. Like, Robert's drinking the Decade One. We could never distribute that beer. It would be fucking $100 a bottle. It'd be ridiculous. Like, nobody would ever buy it. But with the ability to sell directly to consumers, we can make insanely decadent, ridiculously expensive to produce beers. That Decade One went in 2 barrels. It was double barrel aged, and they were the best barrels, like expensive barrels to get, like Blanton's and Willet, these special reserve barrels from these high-end distilleries. But and then like vanilla on top of that. Vanilla is ridiculously expensive. I don't know if you guys understand how expensive vanilla is. It's crazy.
As a baker, yes, I am very aware.
It's funny because I actually went to, I think I had to get vanilla for my wife just like a few weeks ago, maybe like a month or so ago. And I couldn't believe how much a little bottle of vanilla costs versus
like
something
gold.
It's like, wow. Yeah. So it's expensive to say the least.
So without the ability to sell directly to consumers, breweries cannot afford to invest in all of these expensive beers, and that's not good. Like that's what we all want. We want interesting, innovative, innovation is expensive. It is, and we don't get to move forward in any product or industry without innovation. And it just, so the ability to sell directly to consumers really was a game changer. And but unfortunately, that was about 2014, 2013. Since then, there really hasn't been anything dramatically different in Louisiana. And part of it is, we'll take some of the blame, and some of the breweries that are like us in Louisiana will take some of the blame, because we've kind of, in our defense, we've figured out how to work within the rules that exist here. And we are successful doing, things within the laws in this state, and it's fine. I'm not actively working to change anything right now, because I'm focused on what's the next awesome beer we're going to try and come up with and make. That's our focus. I'm not personally focused, and I know that our other breweries in Louisiana are kind of thinking the same way as I am. They're worried about, what do our consumers want from us? What's the new hotness that we need to come up with? And they're not so much worried about forcing through some kind of a bill that allows them to self-distribute. Distribution, traditional distribution works. You can make money with it. If you make good beer, you can have a successful business selling through the traditional 3-tier system. Like I said earlier, I love our wholesalers. They do a great job. If there was no requirement to use a 3-tier system, I would still sell beer through my wholesalers, because in my case, I have a great group of wholesalers that do a really good job putting our beer in amazing retailers and making it available to consumers. But I still should be able to sell beer however I want, Unfortunately, the bad news is there's just not a lot of change that's happened in the Deep South, Louisiana in particular. It's just it's a crooked politician thing more than anything.
I think we understand up here too the restrictions and rules that were created pre-craft beer boom, that just don't understand what the craft beer industry is now. And I think it's also probably a little greased from some bigger names, and I won't use like Anheuser-Busch's name or Miller Coors' name. I would never say that out loud. That I would, think they're doing something nefarious like they tried to do in Ohio, but I would never say their name. Talking about making new beers and collaboration from our chat. Guys, you can watch us live, betterondraft.tv, facebook.com/betterondraft, twitch.tv/bot podcast, facebook.com/betterondraft, and youtube.com/betterondraft, 7 p.m. Eastern. From our chat, Tito Huffman asks, he is currently drinking a Gulf Coast Imperial IPA that is a collab between you and Untitled Art. His question is that how does a collaboration like this come about, and are collaborations a common thing for Parish?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we love collaborating. We don't have enough time or capacity at the brewery to do as many collaborations as we would like to do. Typically, we get to know somebody from another brewery. Most of the time it's through some kind of a festival, or we get invited to go somewhere and we meet somebody, and we get to know them. It's a lot like dating, right? You kind of you get to know each other. You decide if it's a good match. You guys on the same wavelength. You have the same interests. You like to use the same hops. How you like to. What kind of grains are you into? The freaky shit or the normal shit. And if it's a good match, then it's like having a relationship. And if you have a relationship with that brewery, you tend to collaborate. I mean, we've done more collabs, I think, with Other Half than any other brewery. They're kind of prolific. They do quite a lot with everybody. They're very friendly. But we have a good relationship with those guys. We talk to them a lot. I mean, I text those guys, a few times every month about various things, brewery stuff, equipment stuff. I mean, we're sharing notes basically about how we make beer. And we have a relationship with them, right? And that's how we do collabs. So when we have an opportunity to make a unique beer, a slot in our production schedule that we want to make something interesting, we decide we'd like to make it a collab, we approach the people that we have relationships with. And the Untitled Art guys, that's more of a recent development, and we kind of got to know them. It's interesting. It's actually through Microphone Brewing kind of got us involved with Untitled Art somehow. We're going to collab with Microphone soon, but that's how it happened. We just kind of got introduced and hit it off with those guys, and just like dating. It's weird.
I'm just imagining setting up something now where we're like at the next GABF setting up like speed dating between like a group of people with their malt choice and a group of people with their hop choice, and just see who pairs up. I think this is a great idea, and I'm gonna sell it. But I know Wendy's got a question for you.
So first off, I'd like to say that's probably the best description of collabs I've ever heard. Definitely made me chuckle. One of the things that I'm curious about listening to you talk about innovation is what is something that you look forward to trying? It's twofold. My question is, what is something that you look forward to trying here in the future? And what is your favorite style of beer to brew?
Interesting. That's a hard question. Man, so let me start with the second one first, because that one's a little easier to answer. So like the favorite kind of beer to brew, I don't actually brew beer anymore. I've got a great team of guys that actually do the physical brewing, but I can still call myself a brewmaster because every recipe I approve, and ultimately anything that we do here has to go through me in terms of recipe changes or technique changes or process changes. And my favorite beer to create and generate at the brewery is probably something that is innovative and new, loud, and intense. Something that's like the term I used earlier, the wow beers, right? Anything that the next beer that we've never made that is something that makes our consumers say wow, You know, that's what makes me excited. That's my favorite thing to do here, is to work on trying to develop something that when we give it to the person across the bar, they say, wow, you know, their eyes like, whoa, that tastes exactly like chocolate cake. You said it was going to taste like chocolate cake. It tastes like a fucking chocolate cake. You know, that's my favorite thing to do here. Like Rev Coffee Stout, you know, I forget who asked about it. Maybe it was Robert, but the Rev Coffee Stout that's a wow beer. It tastes like cold brew coffee. It's amazing. It's like, it's so smooth, and I love watching people drink it for the first time. It's to watch their eyes open up. Like they never thought a coffee beer could be so coffee, just rich, smooth, none of the bad stuff, none of the bitterness, just rich cold brew coffee. And what was your first question again? That it was kind of hard. I avoided it.
What is something that you would like to see happen?
I hope we can do more collabs. I would love to do more collabs. We love doing collabs. It's just hard to do it and run a business at the same time because collabs are time consuming. And, you know, our business would be if I was really smart and was just interested in making the most money possible as a business owner, you know, we would make one product, we would sell it in one size, and we would sell it like in as many places in the most efficient way possible, like a robot, you know, and you know, like Bud Light, for example. And that's not very exciting, but unfortunately, there is some of that behind every single brewery, right? Because they have to make money, they have to be profitable. So there is some element to every brewery trying to stay in the black, right? And those things that keep you in the black sometimes are not very exciting. You know, we have to make beers like Canebrake still, even though it's not as exciting as it was 10 years ago. It's good for our business, and we do have some loyal consumers that love Canebrake, and we want to keep making that beer for them. But our business isn't set up. Our brewery in particular isn't set up to do collabs every week. You know, some breweries are. Untitled Art, they're a good example. Like they've built like almost an entire business model out of doing like collabs frequently, right? Which is cool. But I'd like to do more collabs. Collabs are awesome.
That's fun. Nick, I think you
Yeah.
had something you wanted to add?
Yeah. I want to go back to you going from the Fortune 500 background into brewing beer, essentially. And there's got to be something besides the fact that, like, okay, this isn't for me, that kind of triggered you wanting to hop into this industry. Were you homebrewing at all when you made that decision, or did you just kind of just jump into it? And if you were homebrewing, do you recall what your first homebrew was?
No, so you know, first of all, I don't believe a lot of people when they say, oh, I was homebrewing and my beers were awesome. People loved them and said, I think most of them are full of shit.
I'm sorry, that's great.
I'm marking that time. I'm gonna save that for a quote later.
No, that's awesome. I like it.
I'm sure there are quite a few people who are homebrew enthusiasts who are really good at homebrewers, and eventually they turn that into a successful brewery because they were so good at homebrewing that people encouraged them and they felt, you know, enabled to start their own brewery. I'm sure there's some of that, but I mean, we got 7,000 breweries in the United States.
Yep.
None of those, 6,900 of those people started learning how to brew beer with the intent to start a business first. You know, they were, and I'm one of those people. They may not admit it because that's not a romantic story.
No, I agree. I mean, we've had people on this show. One that comes to mind, John over at a place called Roke Brewing. I remember one of the things that he said right out of his mouth, that my intent for this brewery was to make money.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, yeah, I like to brew, you know, I like, you know, the product, but I'm in it to make money and get distribution out there within the first year or two. I remember that conversation.
How do you remember anything from that episode?
Dude, that we were Oh,
Sorry
man,
to
that was
interrupt.
yeah, it was a
Andrew,
rough night. But anyway,
a great episode. It was one of those times where, when we were drinking 20% beers as like the
that was a
low end.
mistake.
Like we were busting out bottles of the brewery and stuff, and then like the low end beers were double IPAs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm sorry, Andrew, but please continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started the brewery with, the intent of, I thought it was a great business opportunity. Like I said, identifying that there was no beers being made in Louisiana other than Abita. And it was, I did homebrew. I homebrewed for like 2 years, but it was 100% focused on figuring out how to make beer because I wanted to start a brewery. I wanted to start a brewery that could sell beer commercially. So, I bought, books. I was learning on the internet. I was reading, every night how to make beer. And fortunately, I have an engineering background, I have a chemical engineering degree.
Props to you, mind you.
It's
hard. It's hard. It's a hard degree to get.
Yeah, I'm pretty well versed in manufacturing and processes, and then even like my time working for the Fortune 500 company Alcoa. I mean, it was a rapid educational process, working for them on how to effectively run a manufacturing company, how to do things that in a manufacturing world that are good, and I use all those things to build a brewery. And it was a lot of tools that were very helpful. But I was home brewing for 2 years, developing recipes. It was beers like Cane Break really was the first big one. Even before I started the brewery. Now, remind you, this is back in 2008. There was no such thing as a hazy IPA.
Yep.
There were brown ales, blonde ales, and
Episode 250. So I don't know where we cut off. I don't know what was part of the video, so I'll just simply start re-asking the question. I am drinking your South Coast Session Amber Ale, and based on I'm getting feedback in my own ears.
I think I just heard. I actually heard it. I think. Oh, there we go.
go.
Okay, we're back.
You know what? Cut. Take 3. Bam. We are back better on draft. We got Andrew Godley here from Parish Brewing. If we did not get it earlier, the question was to Andrew. I'm drinking your South Coast Session Amber Ale. This beer is an amazing beer, but this isn't the original recipe. You were mentioning earlier that everything goes through you. What was the process of having to change this recipe, and how long did it take for you to kind of get it to where you wanted it to be again?
Well, we don't really, most of the beers here change and evolve, even some of our biggest, most popular beers like Ghost in the Machine, and we're always making little improvements to it if we think it makes it better. We're not stuck in making a beer one way just because that's the way it's been made. We don't believe in that. We think if we can make a beer better, we'll do that. The South Coast in particular, that's even easier for us to make a change to it because it's one of our smallest volume products. So there's nothing to lose, right? If you want, basically with that beer, the story behind South Coast, it was the second beer that we ever made. It's an old beer for us, 10 years old now. And it was meant to be a very easy to drink amber ale, right? The whole idea behind that beer originally was, there's American amber ales. Most American amber ales are big, robust, chewy, roasty, almost bready, big amber ales. We, down here in the South, Cane Break was really popular. We said, well, let's sort of just make it closer to Cane Break. Let's, take out some of the roast, take out some of the maltiness, take out some of the sweetness, take out some of the hoppiness, and let's just dial it down to almost be like an amber blonde ale, sort of real easy. And it did okay. I mean, we sold some of it for a few years, but it never really, it never was a hit, but we sold enough of it to keep making it. We still make it today because there's loyal followers who buy that beer. But to be honest, I mean, I wanted it to just be a little more flavorful. So we started adding back those more traditional American amber ale ingredients, you know, the roasted malts, the caramel malts, the bready malts, victory malts, stuff that, you know, Cara Munich, stuff that gives it that, you know, chewier, breadier stuff, but still trying to stay true to what the original intent of the beer was to be somewhat easy. So I hope what you're drinking, if it drinks to you like a pretty easy, but still somewhat flavorful amber ale, that's what that beer is supposed to be now.
Like regarding the crushability, like the ability to just continuously drink it, and not get bored. Like this is definitely on par with like a Killian's. Easy to drink, flavorful, but the flavors are just more explosive. Like it doesn't taste. You could tell when something feels a little mass produced, like it's just a little bland. Like there's a little too much water in there. Whereas this, like I feel like I'm drinking beer. I feel like I'm drinking what Killian's probably was before, you know, it got mass produced and all over the world. It reminds me a lot of like a Smittix. Just with the flavor profile, I feel like it's just I'm a huge amber guy. I'm a huge malt forward guy. So this kind of stuff is like in my wheelhouse. And I mean, if I'm drinking something and it's bad, then it's bad. But I didn't realize it. But I'm almost already out of the glass before I even wanted to ask you the question about it.
That's not a very sexy beer. Like there's not a lot of beer nerds out there losing their, you know, minds over an amber ale these days. But it's a delicious beer. I mean, we drink a lot of that around here at the brewery. My head brewer, Ryan, he wanted to add a bunch of melanoid malt to it. And that's primarily what you're tasting. Melanoid malt. It's a malt that's caramelized in a way that simulates the old school decoction mashes that were done in Germany. What they would do is take some of the mash liquid and put it in the kettle and boil it, right? And when you boil it, you get these dark sugars that form, melanoidins. It just you have Maillard reactions that occur where the sugars basically caramelize or turn dark, and that's that flavor in that beer.
I am enjoying it. I know Rob is just begging me to ask you another question, so Rob, pass it away.
All right. Well, I mean, basically, you pretty much saw this one coming because there's been a lot of people who have been showing up in the Facebook feed talking about it, and you've already brought it up as well. But of course, being one of your bigger sellers that have been across this nation, and as you had mentioned already, people in Japan already trading for this, is Ghost in a Machine. Right. And now, one of the things about me is that with IPAs, they have started to kind of fall off quite a bit. I'm turning into a bit of a Ken right now when it comes to IPAs, because for the most part, I'm getting a little bit tired of them. But when it comes to Ghost in a Machine, that the flavor profile that comes from this, that I feel like I can't walk away from this, because there's so many things about this that is so good. And just like the profile and how it hits and the little like sweetness and everything to it, that is really awesome. The one thing I didn't know about this beer, though, was that it was in development for 2 years. I guess that's a long time to develop a beer. So I'm kind of curious about what went on with that development and why that took that period of time to create. I mean, hell, patience is a virtue, but I'm curious why it took so long to come up with it.
So I see you're drinking Ghost now, right?
I am. Yes, I am drinking it right now.
Yeah. So I was hoping you were going to ask me about Decade One, because that one's awesome too. But the Ghost in the Machine is something that we're all very proud of at the brewery here, and the reason why we're proud of it is because of all the things that you just mentioned. So let me just sort of go through them. The first is, you asked about it doesn't fall off, right? And why do most IPAs fall off? And what that means to me, and, you know, correct me, jump in here if you interpret this differently, but to me, it's typically like when a beer is really fresh, it pops, it hits, right? You have all these bright like characters that just jump out the glass. And, you know, a month in a lot of beers, they just aren't as bright. They don't pop the same. And 2 months in, they just turn into sweet messes, right? Yeah. Is that fair to say?
I mean, that pretty much, I guess you could call that's the zombie dust syndrome, because people feel like if zombie dust isn't fresh, it's just not as good as it was intended.
So this is the thing. What is making those beers do that, right? And what is making those beers not be bright and pop out the glass? And all that is oxidation. It's oxidation. And all beers get oxidized at some point. There's a little bit of oxygen introduced into these beers at many steps along the way in the process, whether it's, fermenting, filtering, centrifuging, whatever the brewery's doing, packaging the beer. Even in the work production, there can be some forms of oxidation. But oxidation, presence of oxygen in the beer is ultimately what makes it dull down and takes the edge off of all those beautiful, wonderful, bright, powerful things that pop, right? It decapitates them, so to speak. That's a little graphic and violent. I've never used that analogy before, but decapitates them. We do something that's very unique. I don't mind sharing this information, but we've never really talked about this a lot because nobody really asks why our beers don't fall off, because Ghost doesn't. Ghost, you can get a bottle of Ghost and in 2 months it tastes way more fresh than most other IPAs or double IPAs, in my opinion. And I had a bottle sitting on my desk here behind me for like 2 years. It was still hazy in the bottle. It's crazy how long it lasts. We have incredibly low DO, or dissolved oxygen, in our beers. And one of the reasons is because we put it in bottles. I know that's kind of hard that's not the narrative that's out there right now. Cans are better than bottles, right? But I'm telling you that when I package beer in my bottling line, I have a canning line also. I have a Wild Goose canning line, and I have a Comac bottling line. The Comac bottling line has much better oxygen DO than the canning line. But that's not the biggest difference. The biggest difference in our brewery compared to other breweries is we do not purge our bright tanks of gas. If you understand the way the brewing process works, right? You have to take fermented beer and put it into a bright tank, and then you carbonate it in the bright tank. In that bright tank, then you package it. That process of putting beer from the fermenter into the bright tank, most breweries, they remove all the air that was in that tank by purging it with CO2. They push CO2 into the bottom of the tank, and they let it flush out all the atmosphere in that tank, all the oxygen in that tank. They flush it out for like 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it takes. And then they put the beer in there. But the thing is, you never really remove all the oxygen with that method. It's just constantly diluting the oxygen. You're pushing CO2 into it and flushing it, but you're always leaving behind a little bit of oxygen. We actually fill the tank with sanitizer, 4,000 gallons of sanitizer. So it's 100% sanitizer. There's no air in it whatsoever in that tank. And we push the liquid out of the tank with carbon dioxide. So there's 100% CO2 in the tank when all the liquid's pushed out. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So our beers have very low dissolved oxygen in them, and that's why they last so long. That's why Ghost in the Machine tastes really fresh and like bright, several weeks after it's packaged, when other IPAs might be kind of falling off a little sooner.
Gotcha. And I know that with the DDH Ghost that has been coming out, my friend Sean Anderson, who's been mentioning or asking in the chat, he was curious with the DDH that Ghost in the Machine that has been coming out. Is that going to be more of an annual thing, or is it going to be just kind of one of those things that's going to be more regular in the rotation with the regular Ghost?
Yeah, we plan on doing it at least twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. If we made Ghost more DDH Ghost, if we made it more than that, then there wouldn't be any hops for anybody else in the United States to make beer.
Wow.
I'm joking. Uh, so no, but it does use a lot of hops.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue. I mean, I think when we make a batch of DDH Ghost, we use more hops in that batch of, I mean, we're using like 2 pallets of hops in one batch of DDH. It's insane the amount of hops that go into a batch of DDH Ghost. And that's one of the limitations is just, it's hard for us to secure that amount of hops. If we were to make DDH Ghost, once a month, let's just for argument's sake, once a month, we would have to triple our hop purchases from our hop farmers right now. And that's a difficult thing to do. Number one, because the hops are very expensive. The hop farmers don't even have that volume available. Most of the hops that we're using today were purchased 3 years ago with hop contracts. That's the way that it works. So the limitation on a lot of these really intense IPAs like DDH Ghost that use a ton of hops is a lot based on our ability to forecast, 3-4 years ago, what are we going to need, 3-4 years in the future. So essentially, to answer your question, is we can't make more DDH Ghost than maybe 2 or 3 times a year because we didn't forecast enough Citra hops back in 2018.
Okay.
We didn't know how big DDH Ghost was going to be in 2018.
Right. And I guess one quick one. I did actually want to talk about the Decade One beer, which I was really enjoying that stout. But I was curious with obviously, being open for a decade in Louisiana in an area where there's not that many breweries that are there. I guess really quick, just talk about the Decade One and the process and everything that came up with that particular one, because that was really good.
So Decade One is an awesome example of double barrel aging, right? So we, like you had the Caribbean Shade earlier. We make some good barrel aged beers where, we take a thick stout, chewy, decadent, rich motor oil stout, put it into a barrel, and a really good barrel, and you age it for 6 months to a year, and you're going to get everything you can get out of that barrel in that time. And if you drank that beer that's aged in a barrel for up to a year, a single barrel, it would have quite a bit of barrel characteristic to it, and you can adjunct it and whatever. But double barrel aging just takes that element to another level, and that's what you're drinking in Decade One. So American oak barrels are used for bourbon because of the vanillin characteristic in it. French oak doesn't have the vanillin in the wood. The vanillin in American oak gives off the vanilla properties. And I mean, if you were drinking Bourbon County 6, 7, 8 years ago, you know what I'm talking about. It was like the thing about that beer that everybody loved was, wow, it tastes like vanilla. It's crazy. That was the vanillin from the oak barrels. When you take a beer like Decade One, I mean, we the whole brewing industry has sort of ratcheted up beyond Bourbon County Stout now. And we're part of that group that's sort of making these stouts way more intense and flavorful now. I mean, we're actually aging vanilla beans in the barrels for a year with the beer. So that beer actually had, I forget if it's Tahitian or Ugandan vanilla beans in that particular beer, but we literally aged the beans in the barrel the second year that the beer was aged in the second barrel that it was put in.
Right. Yeah, that is very, very smooth. But I'm gonna pass it off to Wendy because I believe she's got a question here.
I do. So I've opened a couple of beers while we've been on the show. I have an Atticus Atlas, which
Yeah,
is
that's awesome.
a triple IPA, which is flipping amazing. Oh my God. I'm not even an IPA fan, and I want more of that. Like, you wouldn't believe. I'm gonna have to
Tavor.
put Tavor back on my phone, doggone it. But I'm also drinking a Rising Hope, um, which your version is a Berliner Weiss with raspberry, blood orange, and Bulgarian rose. Um, this is so well blended. The flavor is amazing. But I am a volunteer by nature, so I love any beer with a cause behind it. So could you tell us a little bit about Rising Hope?
Yeah. So first of all, Atticus is all Galaxy hops. So if you like Atticus Atlas, you're a fan of Galaxy hops. It's just like it's a 9% Galaxy hop bomb. I mean, there's really not much more to it than that. The Rising Hope is a cool beer. But the pediatric, I think it's the American Pediatric Cancer Foundation. Does it say on the? Is it National Pediatric Cancer Foundation?
I
National.
think it's national, yeah.
Yeah, so the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation, they approached us as they did several other breweries. If you look at their website, you can see this information. But they, this Rising Hope beer is something they've done for a couple of years now, and they approach a few breweries around the U.S. to make a recipe that they come up with, which is a little weird for us because we usually don't let people tell us what to make, but because it's a good cause, they came up with this recipe and they said, let's make a XYZ beer, and you guys can make it. A few other breweries around the United States, some well-known breweries that people are aware of, some hype breweries are making it. We'd like for you guys to make it with us and be our brewery in the Louisiana Gulf South area. And so all proceeds will go to the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. And I have 2 kids. I couldn't imagine what having a child with cancer is like. I feel myself almost getting choked up even thinking about the possibility of something like that happening. And so for a cause like that, to donate a little bit of money to with a beer, it's really kind of a no-brainer for us. It's an easy cause to fall in love with and get behind. And so we're giving all of our profit from that beer, which is quite a bit of money, to the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. The beer itself is a Berliner Weiss, which is different from what all the other breweries did, because Rising Hope, the folks there, they wanted to make an IPA with blood orange, Bulgarian rosé, and raspberry. And we looked at it and said, no. This needs to be a Berliner. It's going to be gross if it's an IPA. Trust us. Let's make a Berliner. It's going to be delicious, And so that's the story behind the beer.
Well, good call, because it is fantastic.
They know a lot about childhood cancer. They don't know much about making beer. It's fine, but we got them. They take care of the childhood cancer stuff. We'll take care of the beer.
Right.
All right. Well, we are going to do a final round of questions. I appreciate you going a little bit long with us, but this interview has been amazing. I hope you have had a great time with us, as much as we've had just listening to you chat about beer. So I'm going to start with Nick. Nick, what is your final question here for Mr. Godley?
Guilty pleasure beer that isn't your beer from Parish. What is in your fridge, guilty pleasure wise?
Oh man.
Uh-oh.
Well, I need to give you more context. Fishing is my big hobby. I love fishing.
Okay.
And it's very hot down here when we fish. So that's the context. So I've been known to buy 12 packs of Miller Lite. And I drink a lot of Miller Lite when I'm fishing. And that's one of the reasons why I started making our Pilsner. We introduced our Pilsner like 2 years ago because all my fishing buddies, they would give me shit for bringing Miller Lite. And they're like, dude, you own a fucking brewery. Good.
You can't.
I can't bring Ghost in the Machine fishing. I'll be laying down in the bottom of the boat in 30 minutes, in an hour. Like I can't.
I think what a lot of
you
people,
got to drink
a lot of people don't understand is that, we talk about guilty pleasure beers a lot on this show, and brewers still will always go towards those easy to drink, crisp, clean Pilsners and lagers. And that even goes to the adjuncts, like adjunct filled ones, like your Strohs, your Miller Lights, your PBRs. So it's it's not anything shocking to us as much as it is to your friends, because you're like, your friends probably think you just have, thousands of barrels of beer at your own expense to, just drink whenever you want. But I'm going to pass it to Rob for his final question.
All right, real quick. I think I saw Murphy, the brewery's good boy, hanging around. I was curious, does he get to hang around the brewery a lot, or I don't know what the laws are in Louisiana because we can't have dogs in our breweries out here in Michigan.
Really?
I'm curious what he gets to do and where he gets to be out in the area here.
Well, I got Murphy right here. You can let him come up. Come on, Murphy. Oh, buddy.
There he is.
Murphy's a good boy. He that's terrible to hear that dogs aren't allowed in breweries in Michigan because Murphy is allowed everywhere here.
Dogs aren't allowed in breweries that sell their own food.
Oh, well, we don't do food.
There
Plain and
are
simple.
Murphy's more important than food.
there are some that have like we have a lot of places where people like to bring their dogs. So if it's an outdoor patio and they sell food, the dog has to be on the other side of the fence. Kind of like, a smoker, like you have to go outside of where the eating area is to smoke.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some arbitrary rules. I understand them. Especially with dogs that aren't necessarily service dogs, because as much as all dogs are good boys and girls, not all of them behave well. So I understand the concept. That is Robert. Wendy, what's your final question?
Okay, so you mentioned the fact that you have some kids. So my question is, since we talked about the guilty pleasure already, when your children turn 21, what is the beer that you want to share with them?
Ooh.
I've never thought about that. That's a good question. I don't know. You could go a couple ways with that. We could make them drink DDH Ghost.
Wow, go right for it.
It'd be like when you force a 14-year-old to smoke the whole pack of cigarettes when you caught them smoking one to teach them a lesson, right?
Right.
Maybe DDH Ghost would probably be a good one. But maybe, if I want them to enjoy it for their first beer, maybe it's a Cane Break, just because that's where the whole thing started for us. And Cane Break has paid the bills here at this brewery for many years, and really has enabled us to be in a position to do some incredible things with beer that we're able to do now. We would never make beers like DDH Ghost or Decade One, or Caribbean Shade or regular Ghost in the Machine without having built the facility with the success of Cane Break. I don't come from a wealthy family. I mean, I built this with my $60,000 of my own investment, saving money for 2.5 years as an engineer, putting every bonus $1,000 a month from my paycheck into a savings account that I eventually started this brewery with. And I needed a beer like Cane Break to get things going. And we were very small. I don't know if you looked on our website or not, but I mean, I started the brewery with a nano brewery. We were making beer I was making beer when I say we, I mean me, 55-gallon drums at a time. I bought some stainless steel drums on Craigslist from North Carolina from a pharmaceutical company and welded them together to make a brewery. So Cane Break, while it may not be a very sexy, beer today, here internally at Parish, and especially to me, it is a very special product because we couldn't make mind melting, innovative products today without Cane Break 10 years ago.
All right. We do have one more question from the chat. Somebody is curious because you guys did the Black is Beautiful collaboration last year. We actually had Marcus from Weathered Souls on our episode 233. They want to know, where did you donate that money to?
Oh gosh. It was there was it was the Boys and Girls Club of Lafayette. It was the Boys and Girls Club of Lafayette, which is almost 100%, not exclusively, a Black or African American charity, but most of the community that is benefiting from the Boys and Girls Club here in Lafayette is Black. And it's something that I've donated to my own personal time and my wife. My wife is an attorney, and she got me involved with them because she was doing volunteer work for them, helping deal with custody cases between, families that couldn't afford it in that particular neighborhood. And we started donating furniture to them and getting involved with them. So it was something that I don't personally believe in. I don't feel comfortable donating money to charities that I don't know a lot about. I don't know if you guys feel that way ever, but that was one. It's not a big, it's not one that's specifically oriented to, any kind of a BLM cause or anything like that. But I just felt it was appropriate. So that's where we donated the money.
Yeah, that's a good one to donate to, for sure.
As someone who grew up in the Boys and Girls Club family, I went from 6 until I was 18 and then donated time until I was 23, 24 years old. It's a community that helped me grow as a person and someone that I always wanted to give back to. Whether that was helping out on their teen nights or just kind of like hanging out to give the staff who are always there a break so that they can go, take a break from the kids because they can get pretty rowdy. So that is one thing that, it's definitely something that I appreciate personally, because again, as someone who grew up within the Boys and Girls Club family, who was a, part of it and who participated and donated time and, still wants to in his later years to donate time and money, when he can, that's just a great cause. So, my final question is going to be a doozy for you, because you had, now mind you, I went through a lot of your old interviews. I wanted to see who you were talking to, what you were talking about, and when you started releasing the sips, which I've got my Pinot Noir grape and black currant bottle right here, you talked about finding the white space within the industry, and how Boston Beer Co. was always finding the white space in the industry. So my question to kind of wrap up this interview, how are you finding the white space in this industry in 2021?
Yeah, that's that question. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. The I don't really know who else uses the term white space, but it's just so that everyone understands what that means is it's the blank area where nothing exists, right? It's the nothing. It's the blank slate. It's we go into the grocery store and we look at the store shelves, or we look on the internet and we look at all the products that exist out there. The white space is all the stuff that doesn't exist. And a lot like when I started the brewery to begin with, right? I lived in Pittsburgh and I came back to Louisiana. And I realized there's no beers being made in Louisiana. That's white space. I admire companies like Sam Adams, who, while they're not considered much of a craft brewery anymore, but in terms of like innovative products, I mean, they created Truly. I mean, look at what Truly has done in the market. And before Truly, what did they do? They did Twisted Tea. Twisted Tea is an absolutely massive product in the market. And before Twisted Tea, it was Angry Orchard. Angry Orchard, right? So here's a brewery that made Sam Adams beer. That's how they got started. And they kind of, dipped their toe in a few different high-end things like the Utopias and whatever. And, they made some different products that were pretty cool. But I mean, how impressive to just like roll into Angry Orchard and then Twisted Tea and then Truly. I mean, it's like home run after home run after home run. I mean, I can't think of a more impressive, smallish American company, right? They're closer in size to me than they are to Budweiser. But to do that is pretty impressive to me. I just admire as in business, I guess. It's just a pretty cool thing. And what makes those products successful is they found the white space before anybody else did. And they're looking at, what's the next thing that consumers are interested in buying where nobody else is playing. And so I like to think of an interstate analogy, right? We're driving on the interstate from, let's say, Detroit to Ann Arbor. Not a super huge drive, but if the traffic's bad, it could be a problem, right? Everybody's on the highway trying to get there. It's all jammed up. There's more cars on the interstate than there then there's, space for us to go. And all we got to do is just, take the exit and take that side road maybe where nobody else is. And we might get to our destination a little faster and get out of that crowded market, so to speak. And for us, Sips is a good example of white space. It's, I don't know how many people are able to see this on video. I'm guessing this is mostly podcast listened to through headphones, but Sips is in a clear bottle. What craft breweries are making beer in a clear bottle?
Is Corona craft?
Yeah, exactly. But look, how cool does that beer look?
Catches my eye, that's for sure.
I mean, it's dark red. You can see the fruit pulp in it. It's cool. It's like it's a slushy beer in a clear bottle. It's we could put it in a can, but we thought it would be doing the beer disservice. I mean, we didn't want to be like everybody else because, again, we like the white space. We like trying to find things that are a little bit different and unique. And, to use the interstate analogy, we like trying to drive off on the side road and explore a little bit. Let's try and find a product that's just got our own thing going. I mean, there's a bunch of breweries making slushy beers in cans. We could do that too, but why not try clear bottles, for example? So the next thing for us, I mean, it's hard to say, but I think that there's probably some white space out there with Berliner style beers that are, we love the mochi stuff. We made a mochi collab with Great Notion that was probably one of the most popular things we've ever made, blueberry mochi. They make mochi beers, but they do IPAs at Great Notion. And Andy and those guys were grateful enough to let us sort of hijack the nomenclature mochi, which, as you know, is a Japanese ice cream in a rice ball. And basically it means we put vanilla ice cream type character in a Berliner style beer. So it's like a vanilla fruit bomb. It's fantastic. So I think that's the next white space for us. We're really going to hit that hard.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. Episode 250, Better on Draft podcast. Andrew Godley, Parish Brewing out of Broussard, Louisiana. We appreciate you joining us. Go check them out when you get a minute. If you guys are in that southeast U.S., you could probably find them on a shelf from the eastern Texas all the way to Florida. Just go to the brewery though. Go head it out. You're over by Lake Charles. Go do some gambling like we talked about on our last fun little episode about gambling last week when online gambling got unleashed to Michigan. That's gonna do it. You can like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's Better on Draft. You can follow everything that we drank tonight on our Untapped, which is Bod Podcast. Of course, on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, you can watch us live. That's Facebook and YouTube, Better on Draft. On Twitch, Bod Podcast is the way to go. BetterOnDraft.tv, that's the easiest place to go. Of course, we have the Michigan Beer Map. That's mibeermap.com to find out how to go. And don't forget to check out our sponsors, the Tuna Liquor over in Rochester Hills and North Center Brewing over in Northville, Michigan. Once again, Andrew Godley, you can find them Parish Brew Co. on Instagram. Get their beer. It is so good. And trust me, he says it's not sexy. That Session Amber Ale is sexy. No matter what you think of your beer, we think it's Better on Draft. Have a good night.
Peace.